Well, Mark, welcome to the Studio
Hi.
Corner podcast.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
me.
so much for having me.
Thanks for coming to my place.
This is a dream come true in here.
You got a view of, looks like a workshop.
It's awesome, man.
Thank you.
I've done a few mobile podcasts. I usually do it in my studio, but I'm like, it's called the Studio Corner because it's in the corner of my studio.
Oh, I see.
It's this tight little corner. You wouldn't believe how small it was, through the video.
Yeah, because I saw a couple of them in there. Looked like a big space.
Looks like a good space, but it's nice and cozy. So it's always really fun when I get to leave the studio and bring it to someone else, especially.
Yeah, I'm glad you could come. Yeah.
This is totally rad. So before we dive into it, I wanted to ask you this question. Classification-wise, do you classify yourself as a guitar player or as a composer?
Well, I flip-flop. It depends on the job I'm looking for at the time.
Ooh.
I may go in and change the website around if I'm up for a composing job that I want. I put composer first, but if I'm out playing gigs, I put guitarist. But it's, the bulk of my work has been composing for the last 25 years. So
That's right.
And I was always a guitar player before that, but in the last, I'd say, 8 years or so, I've really dove back into the guitar and working on fingerstyle stuff and just writing stuff of my own and starting to play around town. I played some gigs over in Santa Monica
Right on.
once a month. Play over here in Woodland Hills with the great LA band, the Bone Daddies.
Ooh.
They invited me into their world about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So I do every Sunday night with them, which is a great little gig at a place called the Write-Off Room in Woodland Hills.
Right on.
There's that. And then I just play and write here a lot. When I'm not composing, I'm working on guitar music now instead of just, screwing around and doing nothing, nothing productive.
So you said 8 years ago you kind of got right.
Got back into it. I've always played and always,
Yeah.
had some chops, but got more into like this fingerstyle world and listening to, this, what they call new contemporary acoustic guitar fingerstyle with all the great Mike Dawes and
man.
Andy McKee and all those guys.
Oh,
and
man.
and they're just the great players that do that percussive thing. I don't do that, but
Yeah.
I went back and listened to some of the old, really started studying the older guys, Leo Kottke and those kind of players, learning that music, which tomorrow night I get to go meet Mr. Leo Kottke when he's in L.A. So I'm going to go to the show and have a meet and greet with him. So,
That's awesome.
So anyway, he's been an idol since I was very young.
It's funny,
And-
those kinds of guys are who I listen to when I want guitar
Yeah.
inspiration.
Yeah.
I can't play like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can't
I
either.
spent my whole life doing that.
Yeah.
But you listen to one of those tracks, you can't help but want to play
No,
guitar.
he was brilliant, and there are a lot of guys like that. But it's not the contemporary slap percussive style that guys, girls, people everywhere around the world. It's a phenomenon. There are people playing phenomena. There are people playing this stuff. There are camps, acoustic camps, concerts around the world for this acoustic style now, and it's wonderful. I just don't have the knack. I really love it.
It's so pleasing. It's I don't remember the last time I heard a new style of guitar playing or music that was so pleasing.
Well, Michael Hedges started it. Michael Hedges, before he passed away way prematurely in the late 80s, I believe it was, he made 3 or 4 groundbreaking albums and did concert tours, and he was regarded as a visionary, and he is. And he started that, and no one's beat that yet.
Wow.
Like him. He's the guy to listen to. But like I said, I still go back to the old guys, the old traditional fingerstyle stuff.
Tommy Emmanuel's like
Tommy Emmanuel.
He's an alien.
Once he came on the
beat him.
scene, he really brought the acoustic guitar, but just guitar playing in general.
Yeah.
For that kind of facility, he brought it to the forefront. He is the master.
Yeah.
He's just something else.
I as a joke, I kind of say like he's like the Steve Vai of acoustic. For
Maybe.
me, Steve Vai is the guy that he has his style, but he can do everything.
Vai can do anything. Vai is a super musician as well. Besides being a guitar player, he's probably one of the best musicians around. His ears and his arranging and he's it's not just about flash guitar with him.
I saw him once
he's
live,
brilliant.
and you could feel exactly what you just said.
He's a brilliant guy. Yeah.
That's incredible. So, speaking of these incredible musicians and these, visionaries and game changers, I was reading a little bit of that little bio you sent me, and there was a phrase used, tonal palette. And I loved that. I loved everything about that phrase, tonal palette.
I forget what the context was.
Well, I stood out to me because I was reading a little bit of your story, and I was hoping you could share a little bit, if you'd like. As a kid, you said you moved around a lot, and you checked out a lot of local music scenes.
Yeah, we were an Air Force family, and we moved constantly. So once I picked up guitar at age 12, we were living in a small town in Arkansas near Little Rock, near the air base, Jacksonville, Arkansas to be exact. Picked up music there with my best friend. We both were starting out at the same time. Billy Hoover, who we're still in contact. He's a wonderful musician down there in Hot Springs, Arkansas area. But he and I started out playing together, and then before you knew it, we got stationed over in Carolina. So I went over there for a year. I met some players and learned different styles over there. Then we ended up on Guam in high school for a year, and I kind of got to know a few of the local musicians there. Everybody was into rock and roll, but there was still this more traditional music you could hear when you'd go around in these the city cultural music in the Agana, Guam area.
Wow.
And then I was born up in the state of Washington. I ended up back there for a year and started really listening to, I was always playing acoustic guitar, really listening to, I bought a Telecaster and was listening to like Eric Clapton and stuff and got those early Blues Breaker albums and just the old drop the needle and learn the licks and played in the school band. I learned to read a little bit in 12th grade and enough to read charts.
Yeah.
Played in the school big band and for senior year.
I
got some experience with that and it was fun, but then immediately got out of there and went to Kansas City where I got my musical education, not from a school, but I met all these jazz players. And it was the beginning of the fusion kind of scene was happening and Pat Metheny was breaking wild. He was from that area actually and breaking out. And so that's when I started to learn about music theory and improv theory, scales, modes, harmonization. I audited some harmony classes with a professor there in the campus at UMKC. Stayed there for about 5 or 6 years. A bunch of us had a local band. We all about 4 or 5 of us came out here to LA in '79 and just hit the ground, started over, I started playing in dive bars. Yeah. It's like, hey, we're going to LA, not Kansas City. Kansas City was the best music town I've ever lived in. And
really?
Just phenomenal players, great people. And not necessarily the Kansas City old jazz scene, but these were young contemporary musicians that were just great. Taught me a lot. Anyway, we all got out to LA, like, we're going to make it. We're going to LA. Started over. Nobody was making money. We were playing dive bars. Started writing and started getting songwriter gigs. I got a publishing deal within about, 6 years, 7 years. Really made no money to begin with out here.
LA.
LA was tough,
changed.
Very tough. And I think it's tougher now because there's less live music to sustain you. You can't necessarily go out and play a supper club or a bar gig and make $50.
No one's going to come to see him anymore.
Yeah.
That's something I've noticed as a young musician. No one wants to leave their house to come see live music anymore.
I know. Very few. It's tough. The indie band thing's kind of happening around in Atwater Village and the West Side and places and down in Hollywood. But you're right. It's hard to get people out.
Yeah.
My Tuesday night, every second Tuesday of the month, I play a place called Trip in Santa Monica.
I've played there before.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, I love that
Trip's
place.
Great people there. But it's tough to get people out on a Tuesday night. Mm-hmm. But we're starting to get, we have people that show up. And it's all my instrumental guitar music. I have a quartet.
Oh, man, I got to check this out.
And it's just guitar, percussion, bass, and drums. And so the guitar, the harmonies are wide open. I can do anything I want chordally, and not tethered to another tonal instrument.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun.
That's genius. I love that.
No, it's not genius.
No, I
not
love
genius.
that.
You should
I'm a
hear
guitar
it.
player, so it's great to hear.
It can be
kind of freedom to
that. Yeah. You don't necessarily have to tie down with a keyboard. We were thought about adding a keyboard, but it's like I just have these kind of loose framed tunes with structures, or kind of like we'll just listen to each other and go. And the percussionist is a brilliant guy named Mike Tempo, who plays with the Bone Daddies, the founder of the Bone Daddies, and Rick Moores is the bass player. Tom Walsh is the drummer. L.A. guys that have been around forever and really good players I've known for years. And it's fun. It's just our monthly gig that we go out and just play instrumental stuff and have fun. And
I love that in the midst of everything that you're working on all the time and doing, that you make the time to do that.
Sometimes they collide.
Yeah.
We were working on the Dolly Parton series last year, which was a year's worth of nonstop work, sleepless nights, had crazy schedules, and then going to Capitol at least once every couple of weeks to record the orchestra, prepping the orchestra, and just writing all the music and getting it ready for orchestra was a huge endeavor. And on top of that, I had gigs locally that, you show up for and you're kind of out of it.
Like half
a
asleep.
little
like,
tired. Yeah,
music is demanding.
those nights you drink coffee, not beer. So.
Huh. So I want to dive into the Dolly Parton thing in a minute. I want to know more about that because it's looking at your resume. There's such a versatile thing, but I'll get there in a minute.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, especially someone with so much experience, so much talent, so much intuition for music. I'd say.
Yeah, it's largely what I
Well,
I'm flying
you
by.
moved around so much and you absorbed these local music scenes. You were able to learn. What was your secret to it? What kept you open to actually absorbing and learning, and more importantly, applying it to yourself?
Wanting to fit in with players, wanting to fit in with the guys that were better than me. Every time I moved as a kid, I always met, because I wasn't that good. I was okay. I could play chords and learn Beatles songs and learn Who songs and whatever of the era, and played a little bit of top 40 stuff. But I would always meet, in every town in the world, there's some guitar player or piano player or drummer, some musician who just is burning, just a killer player.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough, every time I moved, it's like I would meet somebody like that. Always
find them.
It wasn't hard to meet somebody better than me because I wasn't very good, but I got to know them. And we'd either have a band together, and I just absorb as much as I could. And I just wanted to be a better player. It wasn't about going out and performing and getting chicks or anything. It was more like I really want to learn to be a good guitar player.
There's such a great philosophy behind that, I think.
It wasn't an intended philosophy. It was just sort of where I gravitated towards.
I think that's why it's so great. It's just, you wanted to fit in, you wanted to make yourself better.
Well, it's like anything. Yeah, you want to fit in, and I've hung easily with music types.
You seek that part out, which is, I think, important there.
Yeah, because my brother and I, he was playing drums, and we would always just look for musicians and hang out and get in trouble that way.
Yeah. I remember I was reading, I was like, man, that must have been that in itself seems like an education.
It
so
was.
many different music scenes, so many.
It was.
Kurt Pescara, every time I talk to him about anybody doing anything, he always asks me the same thing. He's like, well, do they play live?
Yeah.
Have they toured? Have they worked? Worked? And I've always loved that response because it kind of says like, does this person actually know what it takes? And you force yourself in that situation.
As a young person, but then I fell out of it. Once I got to L.A., it was more about trying to write songs. I got into TV fairly early, writing for some early shows in the mid-'80s, and then assisting some other composers writing. But, it wasn't all that. I wasn't seeking all those things out purposely,
Yeah.
It just kind of opened up. But I didn't do a lot of touring or playing live once I got to L.A., not until... not that I do it that much, but until, like I said, the last 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
Now, I've been playing gigs out, trying to play as much as I can. But in the early days, I didn't do the touring thing. I played in a ton of bands wherever I was locally. Never did the tour thing on a level of a lot of great players around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't travel well. After all that moving as a kid, who wants to move?
Yeah, I mean, you're like,
I'm stuck. I'm not
I made
leaving.
it this far. Let's not keep doing it.
I'm going to hang here.
So with composing, is it I guess for me, I'm not educated as a composer. I'm not educated as someone that scores TV or film. But when I think about a composer, I imagine their main instrument being a piano.
It can, yeah, I start there sometimes.
But you are a guitar player.
Yeah.
And it's for me, it's like, that's not traditional, but do you think that changes your approach?
Well, it makes me a bad piano player is what it does. But it also, there's one, I mean, I know where everything is on the piano.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
can't play, and I can't syncopate, and I can't coordinate two hands. But I can hear music, and I can find it, I can hear it in my head, and I can find it on the keyboard. It makes it simplistic, but for thematic scoring, and when you want to compose something that's not just beats and grooves, as a lot of music is these days, but something with some musical value to it, harmonic value, I can find little melodies and things and play them so simplistically that allows me to go back and orchestrate it later, but I'll start on guitar sometimes, but I'll usually start with the keyboard, and then you've got a map, you record the keyboard part, and you've got a very rough draft. For me, super rough.
Yeah.
It's very elemental, but it works, I can come up with good melodies and ideas very simply, very quickly. And then the real chore is it takes me a long time to flesh those into a listenable piece of music. Whether it's for orchestra, whether it's for kind of cool modern sounds or whatever it is. You know, I'm not a great keyboard player, so I can't get everything and arrange it quickly, but I can get the ideas fast. So
Awesome.
It just takes me a little longer to get it orchestrated and get it arranged.
Do you ever grab the guitar after you found your melody and kind of
Yes.
mess around with it? And
Yes.
so
Sometimes
it's kind of like your exploring tool.
So it just depends. If I really want to come up with something a little more advanced harmonically than I can do on keyboard, I will start on guitar because I can do what I need to do on guitar very easily. But for a lot of scoring stuff, you want simple ideas. You know, you want a guy that plays lame piano. I'm in high demand around here.
Is that like, you know, across the board? Usually you're looking for someone that's going to keep it simple as a
Well, it depends on, you know, what producers and directors are looking for is, you know, it varies wildly. You know, they want somebody with original voice. What I've learned over the years of trying to get scoring gigs and with all the technology now, and I would like to say that scoring now, you know, having MIDI and samples and your writing rig is to the generation now musically is what playing Beatles music was to my generation. What getting a guitar and being in a band. Now it's I want to go to Berkeley. I want to go to a production school. I want to go somewhere and learn how to be a composer. And I've got all these samples and all the sounds at my fingertips. And you know, there's so many people doing that now. Young people coming up and they want to do it, and they're great. There's a lot of great ones out there.
So you think it's a very good thing that the technology has allowed us to have access?
It's allowed me to do what I did.
Yeah.
I mean, I was not a sit-down pen and paper guy. I can pen and pencil, paper and pencil, you know, flesh out a score by hand. I can do it very slowly. I can read it very slowly, but it's not my first instinct. My instinct is, since I've had the technology, I can create a score, you know, as a lot of people can, because you have access to sounds and technology. So,
do you think that it diminishes any sort of, you know, ideas that could come from having to do it?
No, because I think the electronic world, not electronica or EDM, but I just mean electronics in music now.
Yeah.
Sound design, whatever you want to call it. I think it's a blessing because, you know, there's
I love hearing
tonal music. Tonal music is great, and orchestral music will always be around. That's wonderful stuff to aspire to. But there's something really cool about, you know, what's happening right now. The Hildar, the woman that won the Oscar for you know sound the film scoring Oscar.
Yeah.
Best soundtrack, whatever it is. Anyway, she's amazing, and it was largely a sound design for the Joker. She's great, you know, and that's a totally different way of scoring. And she's a great musician too. She plays the cello. She's brilliant, you know, but she has this other focus that's mind bending. She's really great.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that because I hear so many mixed opinions about this idea of technology advancing, like putting people out of work in this.
Well, yeah, that's happened. Henry Ford did that with the assembly
it's
line.
Just evolution, you know, it's
200
just,
years ago. So,
but I like that. I like how you said, you know, it's something to aspire to. You know, the orchestra, and it's good to aspire to it. But this technology is allowing us to be so, you know, keep that flow happening.
Yeah, there are musicians that won't ever need to do that, and they're great, and they let them. You know, if they can do it electronically and if they can create something that works with the media that they're working on, whether it's a movie or TV show, a game, a YouTube clip, whatever it is, something of your own, you know, it doesn't matter. If you connect with the picture that you're creating, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter how you arrive at it. You know. I used to be of the mindset of, you really have to have that formal harmonic background, and now it's like, it's kind of cool when they don't. There are people that don't necessarily play an instrument that come up with some really great stuff.
They just feel it.
Yep, and they can create it electronically. Fine.
That's awesome. I'm very happy.
It's just sound.
Yeah.
You know?
At the end
it's
of
all
the day.
just sound.
So, with that being said, the whole idea of scoring and finding the right mood and themes, thematically writing music.
Right.
TV to film. I've always been curious about this, and I finally get to ask a composer this question. When you're writing a theme for a show, it's got to be, you know, this idea that every episode can have it. Maybe it's an intro song, maybe it's just a theme that goes through. And you have a chance to bring it out in so many different ways depending on the episode, I imagine. But with film, it's so concrete in the sense of, like, you get one shot to make this the film.
You give it an identity right away, and you don't shift gears. You with a TV show and episodic programming, you take your thematic stuff, your sound palette, whatever you want to call it, and you use that every week for your show. But you have to write to the scene. You have to write different music. But with a movie, you create that language for that movie. And you find whatever works and whatever the director's happy with. And once you have that set, that's the blueprint for that film. It's nothing, you revisit it within the film itself. And not to say that you don't put your own stamp on other films. It's very simple because people may hire you for your own sound, your own voice. But, I've done way more TV than I have films. I've done small films. But that's the challenge for me, is to look at it as you're only working for that film. These sounds and these ideas go for this film, and you have to connect that thread through the whole film to give it a voice, to give it an identity.
Is there one that you prefer?
What do you mean?
Do you prefer working on films or TV?
I think films are more creative because...
Really?
Yeah, I think so, because you get to really focus on that set of sounds and that whatever you want to call it, style.
It's almost like the fact that you are limited to a certain timeline and certain specific
You're
movie.
working on one project for many weeks, if not months, as opposed to shifting every week.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a new episode. You forget that when it's done. You fly fast with television production, and with movies, hopefully you have the time. Hopefully you go deeper with the music, and hopefully you have the time to really let it develop. And to me, when I've done them, it's not the same at the end when the process is over. I've changed the music so much, unless I really nail it in the beginning, but it's rarely the case. It always evolves until you really get the sound just right. And then once you get the blueprint for what you want to do for that film, then you go ahead and score all your scenes and do what's necessary.
So it's diving a lot deeper in film then.
I would say, yeah. Depends on the film, but yeah.
Of course.
And the time frame.
It's also it's so concrete in the sense of like once you made that theme, like that's it. Like you got to be there, it's not going to change next week. This is it.
Yeah.
So I've always just, even as a kid, listened to scores as I'm watching movies.
Yeah.
It's always been, I'm a guy, I love music, right? So actually one of my favorite scores of all time is the Interstellar. Hans
It's a great
Zimmer.
score, yeah.
I listen to that in the gym.
There are a few pieces of music in there that just stand out to me. So they're so great. I forget the scene, but there's one piece of music I had to go, after I saw the movie, I had to go
the
find
cornfield?
it. No, it was one of the, they were in space and they were docking something. I don't know. It was one of the space scenes. But there was some piece of music that just was, to me, just gorgeous. And it worked beautifully. I had to go find that. I can't remember the title of the cue, but that's a great score.
Well, it's crazy because I think about stuff like that because when you listen to that score on just audio, I listen to it all the time as opposed to some other scores from movies. Like it's obviously a very, we're out in space, very specific emotion. I mean, he captured it so well, and it's actually not a lot going on.
No, yeah.
But you feel like you're in the vast emptiness of space.
Yeah, there's not a lot going on in space, so there he captured it.
It's it really is. Really,
he's great.
It's such an ode to what music can do, even at its simplest form.
And you get a chance to do that with films. That's another thing. In films, I think the music is a bigger voice than it is in a TV show. In a TV show, it's just can be just energy behind a scene, and it could be anything. That's why people license so much pre-existing music for TV and media, streaming content. But when something's really scored specifically for the scene, I think the film creators, the filmmakers, take it more seriously. The music is important to it. Sometimes TV music's almost like an afterthought, to me. But it depends on who's making the show. Everybody's different. But that's why I think film you get to dive deeper.
So you've done more TV gigs that you'd said.
Yeah, over the years.
So I was looking a little bit at some of the projects you worked on, and the endless amount of projects you worked on. And there's one word always just kept coming to mind is versatility.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild. I can't pinpoint
Scattered
you on the map.
is the word.
I mean, maybe, but as a fan, as someone listening, as someone watching, it's so impressive because I can't pinpoint you. And I always love finding any type of artist, any type of creative person that I can't classify as this is the kind of stuff they do because they're just so.
It's I was able to pull things off, different styles, and I think some of it's being a guitar player. When I worked on the show My Name is Earl back in the early 2000s with my friend Danny Lux, he and I, it was like a blues guitar harmonica type thing, but we were able to do scoring as well in some of the stuff because it was It was a single camera shoot sitcom, and so it was a little film looking. It was kind of, it was still sitcom music. It was play-ons, playoffs, but internally within scenes, we got to do a few things. But we would score it with guitars and bass harmonicas and drums and a blues bass thing. But it wasn't always just tracks, and that was a fun show to do. But then we turn around and score. I have always done these documentaries for this one company and turn around and score, I don't know, a JFK assassination documentary, and one on the Holocaust. Anne Frank's Holocaust was very serious and real sensitive
Beautiful
music.
Tracks, by the way.
Thank you. And that was it was just after the Earl thing, but I was still working on that kind of stuff at the same time.
See, that right there, that's so incredible because I listened to the Anne Frank soundtrack. And you're saying that's right after the, My Name is Earl. To go, the two on the spectrum there.
From Earl to Anne is a little bit of a stretch, but
But so well done.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's fun to do.
So, let me ask you, is there something that you have to do, a ritual, a practice, something that you do to switch gears so quickly?
No, because right now I'm jumping between a special on the great Gary Marshall, the producer who made every sitcom in the 70s and 80s and 90s, to Pretty Woman and everything. Gary Marshall, he passed away 2 years ago, and ABC is doing a kind of biopic event for his life's work, and it's a 2-hour thing, and we're working on that right now at the same time as working on a kind of really dark World War II documentary called Apocalypse 45, and it's the aftermath of the war, and it's the actual shots of them going through the Pacific Theater and going through the European Theater after everything's done.
Man.
And it's really tough to watch. And working on that at the same time, and that's some real dark music, more tonal sound design type music, which is fun to do. And that's like on the phone with one guy getting notes on the Gary Marshall stuff, and then literally hanging up, and the other guy saying, "Hey, I need you to fix something on this cue. Change the rig, go back to the other thing." And so it's a little schizophrenic, but
that's pro level right there, though.
Well, no, it's
why you get the call.
Oh, yeah. But it's sometimes you take on way too much.
Yeah.
And assistants do come in handy. I know why people much busier than myself have 2 or 3 people on staff all the time. I have part-time people come in. So.
Awesome. So I want to dive into your music as a guitar player in a minute, but before, just because my own curiosity, can you share a little bit about the Dolly Parton experience and the whole Toy Soldiers M&Ms?
Toy Soldiers, well, those are 2 completely different
yes, they are.
things separated by 2 decades. But in the late 80s, I was signed to Warner Chappell Music as a songwriter, co-writing with artists, right? And then fell in with a group of great writers and nice people, and worked with Kylie Minogue, the Australian pop star. She's a great singer, dancer, and I assume she's still around. Anyway, wrote a couple tunes with her, got on a couple albums, and then started working with Martika through this production company, who was a hit in '88, I believe it was, with the song Toy Soldiers. And I played all the guitar parts. And it went to #1 in the United States. It was a #1 hit song.
That's rock
so
and
it was
roll.
like, got a few more guitar gigs out of it. But and then that was that story. And then Eminem, it turns out, 2005, he sampled that track.
It's one of his best songs, too.
Yeah. And I heard it, and it's like he used it. And there's the guitar right there. I got my extra money from the union, my extra $200 because it got sampled on a hit record. So it came around twice as a hit.
That's great.
That's a great song. Martika and a friend of mine, Michael J., wrote that song together, and it's a really good one.
That's awesome.
And Eminem thought so too, I guess.
What a great chain of events to have such a part in the song and have it just revisited and brought to life.
Because of the Eminem thing, I started getting emails and a few things on my website. People like, so what was your rig? What did you play through? What guitar was that? It's like, it was, I barely remember. It was all electronic. There were no amps. It was the little fuzzy Rockman plug-in, a little fake amp thing back then. But that was that story. That was good.
I love it. That's great.
And then a few years ago, Dolly my good friend Velton Ray Bunch. Ray Bunch, we've been pals forever. He's a really fine composer, and he's worked with Dolly over the years. She called him and said, I have this 8-hour anthology, film anthology with Netflix. So does Ray want to do it? And he goes, yeah, but I want to do it with Mark. And I had actually met her once before, and I think she remembered who I was. But no, we came in as a team, and he and I scored these Dolly Parton's Heartstrings. They're, very... Each one's different. Each one's based on a Dolly song. So you got to.
Was it intimidating to do that?
No, not at all. No, she is super good. Only intimidating thing was the schedule and using the live orchestra. But still, yeah. We did all the writing and all the pre-production here at my place because there's a lot of guitars, mandolins. We'd have violin players, fiddle players come in, and the pre-score that we would then record orchestra to. I had to do all that here. So that was a challenge with the schedule. Each of those 8 films, TV movies, if you will, were completely different than each other. But they all would have a live orchestra on them in the end. So that was a challenge. She was great to work with. The schedule was a challenge. She would come into Capitol Records when we do the orchestra. She came out here a couple times to my studio, and she just is the most genuine person.
That's awesome. And I love to hear that.
And she has great, she just cracks you up. She's just very real and very funny.
She is who we believe she is.
She's really sweet, and what a singer. She's one of the best of the best. She just sings beautifully. The cool thing about that gig was we, once we got rolling and would write, we'd be in the middle of a scene or a cue or whatever, and we're writing. It's like, wouldn't it be great to have some vocal on this? Just a little bit, not the song. We would quote some of her songs that were pertinent to the episode.
Of course.
But these would be like, what if we just had, instead of having a flute or having a clarinet or whatever it is, or a steel guitar, why don't we just have a voice? Let's get Dolly. So we would call her. She was in Nashville, and she's at her studio there, and we'd say, hey, here's the idea we have. Send her the file. We just want you to ad-lib something cool on this. It's just like a little whatever it is. Just Dolly, just do anything. It'll be great. And then wake up the next morning, and her guy Tom Rutledge at her studio runs her place in Nashville. He'd say, "Okay, there's a file in there," and we pull it up, and the first thing you hear in the morning is you hear Dolly Parton voice, custom made, for your piece of music. And it was great. It always worked out well. It was not one of these, maybe we'll use it or not. No, it was always great. It always made the piece of music.
Oh,
how could it not? But
that's so cool.
She's very, very good. And that was a good experience.
Wow!
They may do another round. They may do another round of 8 next year. The production team literally needed a year off after that, after shooting all this. They shot in Georgia, and post production and everything was done out here. It was through Warner Brothers.
Wow!
And Netflix, and it's
a big operation.
It was a grind. It was a lot of work, but it was very rewarding. The shows are out on Netflix now.
I'll have to go check
doing
that
pretty
out.
well, I guess. It's very safe stuff, but they're good stories, really good stories. A couple of them are really stand out.
Awesome.
And good writing, great team.
I imagine the music's great too.
Well, it's good. We've been trying to get it released as a soundtrack, but the snag there is their Dolly's song. Dolly's songs are part of the score in places. And you can't really license that and release that as, that's her song terrain, and you don't really mess with that. But I don't know. Hopefully someday we'll be able to release some of it. But it sounded good. The orchestra used all local 47 orchestra musicians at Capitol Union dates, and it was just
awesome,
really great.
Awesome.
First class with Dolly.
That's so good. I'm very happy to hear all that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward to now. I mean, you've got a beautiful history of creating so much music for so many different reasons, and now you're jamming on the guitar. You're diving back into it. You're
returning to my youth.
You got a band now. So what's the direction for you as a musician? In your soul, what's your direction right now?
Right now is just I'm finishing up about a 13, 14 song CD of just guitar music, mostly solo, a bit overdubbed stuff, but mostly solo guitar. Just finishing that up. It's called Guitars and Blackbirds. And that's really what I've been trying to, between scoring, I'm trying to finish that up. And then I just want to pursue more guitar stuff. You know?
Awesome.
I have my quartet, which we started recording. I'm going to do another album of that stuff, of, guitar music with the quartet.
Oh, man.
And that's a little more, electric guitar and stuff. The Guitars and Blackbirds album will be it's all acoustic, primarily.
Right on.
But it's all kind of just arrangements of various things,
Well, I mean, if you're willing to share, play.
Well,
we'd love to hear some
I could play
music.
a little snip of the Beatles' Blackbird. This I did a couple years ago on YouTube, and people really liked it, so I'll just play a little bit of it. No, I'm going to mess it up. I screwed it up. Condensed version.
That's awesome.
Kind of trying to blend slide playing slide playing with hitting fingers as well. Kind of actually cheating is what I call it, because you can't hit every chord with the slide. So occasionally you have to backstop. So you get a few fretted notes.
Sound though. What an approach to that song as well. That's really, really special.
It's a great melody. I played
Really
this
special.
tune since I was a kid,
Yeah.
but I never played the melody. Everybody learned the chords, but I worked on it for about a year trying to figure out where all the voices were, and this is an open E tuning. So
Okay.
out of tune tuning. And I got that first, and then I realized then you've got to get a major 7 chord here to keep the melody on the top. And that's the one
that's
real reach
so
that
good.
to get that E minor chord, or C sharp minor in this case.
So when you're approaching something like this, as guitar wise, you have the slide, but you have to incorporate both slide and playing the chords.
Right.
What are you choosing to use the slide for? Is it the melody that you're
It's
choosing?
whatever I can grab. It's
Whatever you can grab.
usually whatever. Sometimes if there's a leading tone, a leading voice into a chord, I'll try to do that.
That was really special. Thank you.
Oh yeah. If you can play, this is a standard tuning. That I can play. You can do all the stuff that lays across, across the frets. But when you want to get you can do it on the slide, or you can, which I call cheating.
Now, why do you call that cheating?
I don't know, because I'm kind of half playing slide and half playing just regular fretting.
So because you're not using the slide as much
Yeah,
as you should
because I want to use the slide as much as I can, but so it's like, okay, I can't get that note, but now I can get to the fretted note fairly quickly, instinctually. But when you want to do, what I'll do is I screw that up. But any kind of falling thing.
It's almost like instead of bending up the note, you slide up the note.
Exactly. Whenever it's
Which
available.
makes sense on the ring finger there. What a beautiful approach to that. I like that.
So I'm just I'll fret the accented note is usually slid.
Yeah.
Trying without doing too much of that. And the great Sonny Landreth, the best friggin' slide player ever, he's the king of it's called back fretting, where you can
It's like
grab
barring with the slide.
You're barring, but then when you drop, watch what's happening. This is being hit by the slide, but when you fret behind it, the string is just below the slide, so the note rings. If you don't have your action set right, it'll buzz. But he can do miraculous things. I just kind of noodle with it. But anyway, I've just been playing a lot of guitar lately, and when I'm not scoring stuff, I'm going to continue writing guitar pieces. Which the first batch of them should come out here in the next month.
Oh wow, okay.
So guitars, we got our artwork done.
Is it slide stuff? It's
a little bit of everything. It's all kinds of stuff. It's two or three Beatle tunes, Blackbird's on there. A lot of original things of mine. There's one called Blues for Fahey. John Fahey was a Kottke. He actually signed Leo Kottke back in the late '60s to his label, but he was what they called primitive American guitar, which was a folk style of guitar, but he played real bluesy and a really authentic, incredible player. He passed away some years ago, but I have a tune called Blues for Fahey on there that in honor of him. I have a couple of one West African sounding type of piece of music, kind of modal odd tunings. I go for a few different odd tunings on this thing. And
now, is it just guitar work? Are there tracks behind it at all?
No, it's mostly solo guitar. Occasionally, I will overdub another guitar.
Okay,
but it's one tune actually does have live upright bass and a couple of percussion overdubs. And I do a Kottke tune, his great old song on his first album, one of his first albums, "Busted Bicycle," which kind of treated a little differently. Sounds like an old jug band with a guitar, but that's a fun piece, a challenging piece of music to play. I learned that a couple years ago, and Beatles, 3 or 4 Beatle tunes.
So it's mostly acoustic, you said?
Yeah,
so
a couple of electric things, but
just out of curiosity, this is me, just as a guitar player asking, what's your mic setup for these songs?
It can vary, but it's always. A stereo pair, kind of above, AKGs, and then an engineer friend of mine, Jason Warmer, who is also mixing some stuff on here, suggested I get what's it called, a Beyer M160, and it's this little mini ribbon mic that's been around forever, but they're just phenomenal. And you put it in front of the guitar, it's a front, put it up in front of the. Then I usually put a ribbon mic over here on the body, and then I usually record. I play better when I record myself, and I'm set up to do it.
Yeah.
But I will get engineers over here to help with the setup.
Absolutely.
But I always do the best recording late at night, and it's just me hitting the record button. And once I have everything recorded, I give it to the engineer, to Jason, or my friend Paul DeGray, who is a great mixer engineer, and let them mix it. They can use whatever mics they want. Make it sound the best. I don't have the ears for that.
Yeah.
So I'm not a good mixer. I can hopefully not screw up the recording too bad, because you can get into phase problems with multiple mics.
I was going to ask, because you're using 4 different mics. I mean, you got one stereo set.
One point, I had Paul DeGray over here, and we had 7 or 8 mics, and we were micing from above and everything. And he knew what to do with it.
Yeah.
I would have been lost, and he made it sound great. But typically, it's usually 4 to 5 microphones.
And you're doing all condenser mics?
No. The ribbon mic, the M160, sitting next to a condenser, KM84, a Neumann. Then they're just tied together right about in the front.
Right,
depending on the guitar, what the guitar sounds like. It's usually somewhere in the front. Like I said, usually a ribbon or a large capsule mic here. And then, you're right. These 2 condensers are up front.
Okay.
And if I can and occasionally we will throw in a dynamic mic
Really? For
Throw
an
in
acoustic?
throw in one of these. Yeah, yeah, just to give it. Sometimes it sounds good.
Wow.
They mix it in somehow. He'll make it sound good.
I'm so curious. I'm asking because I just did a guitar tracking. I had a big condenser, like a vocal mic,
Yeah.
right up on the 12th fret, and I had a cheap MXL at
yeah.
the headstock, one in the body, and then I had the
Yeah.
pencil over player's perspective.
Yes.
And just that setup was totally out of hand for me, and I was told that a lot of this is pretty normal.
Yeah,
So
it is.
I'm always curious
I like
as to
that.
what
I just started doing what you just said, the back behind you, or I actually put a Royer up above
Yeah.
me, and that actually sounds a little better to me than the front mic. Sometimes, it's distant.
it's nice to
but-
mix in. It's a really
Yeah.
good mix-in track.
Yeah, but I get into phase issues, so I leave it up to engineers to mix
Yeah.
it. But it's there are a lot of options. You can get in a lot of trouble with all this technology.
Oh yeah.
I always do.
Yeah.
Too many tracks, too many microphones, but.
Well, that's awesome. Before we go, I like to ask all my guests their advice. I think what I want to ask is, what is your advice to young guitar players that want to expand their horizons as musicians, and I mean just as musicians, as artists?
Well, it depends on if they just want to be a guitar player. Start writing original guitar music. Try to get a good road gig. Try to get a good local gig if you can. Pursue academics if you can, reading and theory. And if that's not your thing, and fine, But I would just say, own your content. Learn if you really want to be serious as a solo guitar, or even with a band. If you have a band to record, write your own stuff. Own your content, because in the streaming world now, you are getting, the record companies tended to screw people back in the old days. Well, the streaming companies are now, you're not even getting the back end royalties anymore.
Yeah.
So you're kind of getting it from both sides.
Well,
so
be your own publisher.
own your rights. Sell your publishing if it makes sense. If you get enough steam going. But I would say own your content and write content. Be a writer as well. Everybody everybody can record now. Create a collection of your own original music. Get it out there in the world. Throw it out in the stream.
Huh.
Somebody will license it. If it's good, somebody will dig it and somebody will license it. But that's really what you have to make money with now, media-wise, is licensing or get a scoring gig.
So with scoring, what's your advice for someone that wants to become a composer then?
Well, it's similar deal.
Similar deal.
It's very hard. I think there are probably as many composers now, young composers, as there are guitar players, which is hard to believe.
Absolutely.
Because guitar players were everywhere.
Yeah.
But now the laptop is outselling for music. The music laptop, apparently, I've heard, is outselling the guitar. So the guitar is sort
More
of
guitars for
diminishing in its. Pardon?
More guitars for me.
Yeah, there you go. They're available. But I would tell composers, same thing. Write your own music, even if you're not writing for a project. If you're not writing specifically for a show or TV show or any kind of YouTube content or online content, always write. Score stuff, write stuff, record it, get it mixed, own it, put it out there. And, somebody's going to click on it.
Yeah.
If it's good, somebody will find it. It's a very challenging field right now because so many people are doing it and so many people can do it because of the technology. But shit, if you love it, just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Write just to write. Don't write just because you have a gig. And I've met a lot of young writers. It's like, well, what have you been writing? It's like, well, I don't have a gig. It's like,
That's not why you do it, man.
I never did. I always wrote. Every day I would
Can't help
write.
it.
I would record something or write something, come up with a piece of music, just because I like it. That's all. It's an outlet, But
Let it be that.
That's what I would tell young people, to do that.
I love it.
And I don't know. That's my advice.
Well, I like it. I really like that.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
And you? Are you still playing? You playing a lot?
That's all I do.
Good.
I mean, guitar is my thing. Music is my thing.
Great.
I've had a studio for some time, and for the first time in my life, I'm actually recording my stuff.
Good.
So I'm happy to hear you say that. I have about 30 to 40 songs I've written, and I was struggling. As a young artist, I struggled like, which songs do I choose? Which ones do I do this? And like, oh, do I have enough money to produce this and this? And I was like, man, screw this. one acoustic and one vocal every song. Gonna put it out there and move on with my life.
Yeah.
So-
And if something gains some traction, then
There
you
you
can
go.
go back and produce it up,
Yeah.
and say, oh, someone showed interest. Maybe I should put a band on this. Maybe I should get this orchestrated or whatever you want to do with it.
John Locke's, the ex-guitar player of a metal band called Warbringer, he was on the show about 2 months ago, and he made a statement that I'll never forget. He talked about recording, basically in the sense, he's like, I love recording music because it takes the burden off of that song.
Oh, interesting.
Because we write all this stuff and like we're all worried about what if we forget it, what if this, what if that. But once you record it, you can let it go. And as
That's a good
musicians, it
point.
opens us up to keep writing and move on to the next thing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That really...
It's cathartic. Yeah, I think it is. It's good to get... When working on this guitar CD album of mine, I will obsess over one piece and keep re-recording it, fixing it, and making comps and getting a better take on this section and doing this and spend all this time. And a good friend said a very similar thing to me recently. It's like, look, if it's not... There is a point where it's good enough. It may not be perfect to you, but it's good because he heard it. He's like, you should put this out. I said, well, this thing's screwed up this section and I need to play that better. He's like, the feel's there. The thing's there.
Yeah.
It's done. Let it go. And he was right.
Well,
You can
we obsess,
Yeah. And it's easy to do with, like, again with the technology.
Yeah. You can fix
Easy.
every little thing.
I know. You
So
can
loud.
tweak it to death and then take all the life out of it. So
Well, is there anything you'd like to play us off? Or
yeah, I don't know. Let's see. No, I'll probably mess that up. Let's see.
I don't get a lot of guitar players playing actual guitar on the show, so
Well, there you go.
take full advantage of it. Play all you want before we go here.
I could just pull up a bunch of loops on my sequencer and just bang those out. I don't know what to play. I could just... let's see if I can do
Great
this.
guitar.
Yeah, this one's nice. The Collings. I liked it mainly for the pickups, the gold foils. Need that. I'm gonna mess it up. I can't do it.
Wow.
It could be better.
That was beautiful.
Clams and all. This part always gets me. There it is.
What a great change.
Anyway, it's
That's
a
awesome.
beautiful Beatle tune. She's leaving home.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for doing this. This has been such an honor and
Thank you,
such a
Hank.
pleasure, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks, man. Cut.